Hi there, my name's Allie and I'm back with another video, this time on something completely different. It's a software called Orca by 100 Rabbits. I don't usually make videos on softwares, but I found this and it was really cool. And I kind of wanted to show it off since nobody seems to be talking about it much. However, I do apologize in advance for the shitty lapel microphone. I really was not prepared for this, but hopefully you will excuse the quality. Alrighty, so this is what you see when you start up Orca. As you can see, right when you start it up, it immediately will attach to whatever MIDI is available. I'm not quite sure how this works. I didn't tell it to connect to this device, but I mean, I don't know, it works. Anyways, so this is, as you can tell, a MIDI sequencer. It doesn't actually make sounds on its own. It's more of a programming environment, really, but it has the ability to speak over MIDI. And it also has the ability to speak over OSC, which is known for being useful for like live coding environments like Super Collider and Pure Data, but I don't have that set up. So what I'm using is I'm using a program called Loop MIDI to basically have this go into the MIDI output and then loop around back into Ableton. And on Ableton I have a synthesizer, alto running, and then I also have some drums on channel 2. So that'll just give some exploration here. So anyway, so this is what you see when you start it up. As you can see, it's a grid, sort of like a text editor, but it goes up and down, and you can type things, just on the grid. And you can, just like a text editor, you can delete stuff, you can copy and paste stuff. It's a text editor. The grid itself, you see there's plus signs. Those are just for reference. They don't actually do anything. You can even change the grid by pressing the brackets and the curly brackets. Now, the first thing you're going to notice when you boot this up on your computer is that it's really freaking small. So you're going to want to change the size if you don't want your eyes to bleed. So to increase the zoom, press Control and then the equals sign. And it'll get bigger, and you can keep doing that. It'll get bigger and bigger. Now, obviously, it's kind of fucked up now. It's a little too big, so I'm going to go ahead and shrink it down by pressing Control and then the brackets. Just shrink it that way, and then Control-Shift, controlling the curly brackets to shrink it down that way. You can see we have less space to work with now, so it is a compromise, but it is worth it to save your eyesight. Okay, so as you can see, there we go, that's a little better. All right, so we got a blank canvas to work with. So how are we going to get this to send MIDI events? Now, for me to go over that, first I have to explain the concept of bangs. As you can see down here, we have, these are frames. This is determined by beats per minute. But basically, there are a bunch of little ticks, and every single tick, it'll advance one frame. Now, what we want to create are what are called bang events, which are literally just a little star sign like this. As you can see, when I create one, it just immediately disappears the next frame. But there's a lot of ways to make bangs. To do that, we're going to have to use functions. And the cool thing about Orca is that there is a function for every letter of the alphabet. It's very minimal. So here's a little bit of the function list, just so you can see here. I have that to the side just for reference, but basically every letter does something unique. So for example, I'm just going to place the letter A down here. So you can see instantly we have some inputs over here and then some output and an output over here. So you can see down here for reference what it is. So this is the output and this is A and B. So if I do 1, 1, you see 2 comes out of here. It's doing 1 plus 1. Then 2 comes out. If I do 2 plus 2, then 4 comes out, etc. So it's kind of like a little modular synthesizer. You have inputs and outputs. All right, so how are we going to make bang events? Right? We're going to make those little stars. One of my favorite objects for creating bangs is called delay, which is D. You see immediately when I create it, it starts making a bang every 4 frames. I think it's every 8 actually. Anyways, so what you can do here, you can say, I want there to be a bang every single frame, and it's creating a new bang each frame. This is every other frame. This is every 3 frames, every 4 frames. And then you can even divide it further with this one here. So I could say, every 3 frames, you know, advance this counter. I don't know if that makes sense, but basically this is 3 3s. So it's another way to subdivide it. It's kind of like a time signature. Anyway, so we got some bangs coming out here. So how do we turn those into MIDI events? So to do that, we have to use a special object called the MIDI object, which is going to be a colon. Like this. You see it says MIDI down there. Okay, so MIDI takes a few inputs and no outputs. The inputs are channel, which is the MIDI channel. In this case, we're going to do channel 1, which is 0 in Orca. Then we want the octave. We'll do a 4. And then the note, which is a C. These other 2 spaces are optional, which is why they're not colorful. This is the velocity, which goes from 0, which is off, to F, which is really loud. And then there's the length, which goes from 1, I think, which is like super short, to F, which is a full bar, I think. Okay, so this is all we really need though. So let's take this event, cut it, and paste. And already you hear you've got some events happening. Every time a bang happens next to this little colon, it triggers that MIDI event. And if I change the note, in the octave. Okay, so we got a little bit of MIDI events going on here. Now, note that the bang can happen on any of the cardinal directions to this. So it can happen up, down, or at the bottom. Bangs work that way entirely in the program. It's north, south, east, and west. So, but only next to the colon. So it won't work, for example, if I move it over here, because it's not banging next to the colon. You've got to be up, down, left, or right. Okay, so that's a pretty boring way to generate MIDI events, but very quickly you'll see that it goes a little deeper than that. So we're just going to play around with a few of the objects just to give you a feel for things. So there are some objects which will generate other objects, and there are some objects which will generate numbers. There are some objects that will take numbers and make them into other things or bangs, or I don't know, it goes all over the place, but to experiment, we're just going to try a good mix of a few different things. So to start, let's take a clock. Sorry. Okay, we've got a clock going here. It's going to count up to from 0 to 9 and then start back over. Okay, so that's going to happen. Now I want to turn those into bangs. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a if event, which is the letter F. Now, oh, I should note, by the way, I'm using only capital letters, and there's a reason for that. Lowercase letters have a special function in Orca. For example, let's take A. So A is capital here, so the A is always going to be adding whatever's in the inputs. If I make this a lowercase a, it does the same thing, but you'll note when I change the numbers, nothing happens because it needs a bang to actually make it do its function. So once I send it a bang, you'll see now the math happens. So you can see the add doesn't happen until a bang occurs. So that's an important distinction, but I'm going to be using mostly uppercase letters for this demo. Okay, so anyways, we got clock, which is generating a stream of numbers. Then we got the if, which basically looks at the two inputs, and if they're equal, then it bangs. So now I will take that here. Okay. And I got something going into the input. Now, this is part of the kind of puzzle-like philosophy of Orca. Now I want another clock to feed this input so I can mess around, but the problem is if I put a C here, it's going to be going into one of the inputs for the clock and it's not going to work. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use a special object which is very useful for these kind of space scenarios called the jumper, which is J. Jumper just takes an input and outputs it on the output. So I can do it like this. So I can do now like that. So I've got, oh shit, that didn't work. There we go. Okay, so, fuck. Okay, so you see they're actually interfering with each other. This isn't affecting the input there. That's not going to work. So I'm going to use another object called the jumper, which is like a jumper but left to right. So now I should be able to Jump that down. Okay. And now we see we've got a stream of numbers. They're the same, so it's just constantly doing a star because they're equal. But what I'll do here is I'll add a modulo, which is this input here on this one, so that it'll only be it'll wrap around at the 4. It'll start back at 0 once it gets to 4. So now you can see it's not starring every single time. So now if I put a MIDI event here, I'll do a kick drum. One sec here. There we go. Okay. I'm going to change this clock also to be shorter. I'm going to do a hi-hat actually. This would be better for a hi-hat. So you see I made this whole program and it's all just sort of a weird structure. To move it around, I can even create copies. The cool thing is when you start messing with the copies. So I'll make this one a kick drum. This is the rate of the clock, so I'll make this go slower. It's already we've got sort of a generative pattern going on, or at least a pattern that I would not have created myself if I had a MIDI like piano roll. Anyways, so that's one way of making things work. There's another set of objects that are specifically based around just a few. And those are north, south, east, and west. Now you notice when I press any of those letters, there they go in that direction. North goes north, east goes east, south goes south, west goes west. Okay, so the cool thing is when they hit the object, you might have noticed it bangs whenever it hits something. See, it bangs at the end. So you can use that to generate cool MIDI stuff. So what I'll do here is I'll use a generator. Now a generator is going to create things. Actually, I'll do a teleporter. Okay, so a teleporter is going to take thing in the input and create it somewhere down here. And that's determined by the X and Y coordinates. So if I make this 4 over and 4 down, it's going to make something down here, 4 over and 4 down. Now if I say 1, it's going to do a 1 there. And yes, it can even create new objects, for example, east. Now you'll see it starts creating those east events. It's creating them too fast right now, so I have to fix that. Give me a second here. How do I do this? Can't remember. Oh yeah, I'll make it clocked. So now it's only creating 1 ever so often. And the problem with this is it's not going to hold this in place, so I'm going to place a special object called hold here. Hold, all it does is it holds this thing here. So I'm going to press the east, and it's going to stay there. It's going to stay put. It's not going to go flying away. So I'll put a hold here, and now you can see we're generating little easts at a rate of 1 every other frame at these coordinates. Now we can modulate those coordinates with a clock, for example, like this. You can see it's not really generating them like I thought they would, actually. Let me try this here. There we go. Okay, so that's kind of closer to what I expected. This isn't really going the way I want it. There we go. I tried to switch it to a generator, and that works as I wanted. Okay, so we're creating lots of E's now, and they go off in the direction. Cool. Okay, now I'll make some MIDI events. You see it bangs when it hits the MIDI, so I'll make a melody. Copy and paste this. All right. I'll just change the velocities right here. So you see, whenever it hits that MIDI event, it's going to trigger that MIDI note. So that's one workflow. And now we can change the clock to make it even cooler. I'll take the rate input of the clock here and put another clock on it, because why not? Now you see the MIDI events are getting a little wacky. So now we've got kind of pseudo-random melodies. Pretty cool. Alrighty, and now we have one more object I'd like to show off here. Oh, by the way, there's some pretty cool objects that mess around with the E's and S's and W's. For example, U-turn will shoot stuff off in different directions. So those E's are going north, those ones are going south, and those ones are going west. There they go. Yeah, you can get all sorts of crazy little train stations going on. It's kind of fun. Okay, so last thing I wanted to show is an object called track, because I think it's one of the more important ones to use. Track takes two inputs. It takes key and it takes length. Length is the one you're going to want to set up for first. So I'm going to make a length of A, which is equal to 10. By the way, Orca uses 36-bit. So everything from 0 all the way up to Z. I don't know if that makes sense, but anyways, so you don't stop counting when you get to 9, you keep going up all the way to Z. So you have up to 35 different numbers. Anyways, so we have pattern 10 long, and now the key is going to index something in that pattern. So first let's put some stuff in here. I'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. Okay, so now if I send 1, it's going to go to, if it sends a 0, it'll go to the first part of the track. 1 is going to go to there. And you see how it lights up there. You know, it'll light up. So as I move up, it'll output different things. So that is handy because it allows us to create more determined patterns. So for example, I'll create a variant of the clock called iterator or increment, and it basically just goes up, but you can choose the length. So I can have it go from a loop from 0 to A. I'm sorry, to 9. So now you see, actually, I did A was right. Okay, so you see it's counting up. So it's creating sort of a step sequencer, right? So now I can put stuff in the step sequencer. For example, an E. That's not going to work actually because of the, yeah, never mind. There's another way to make that work, but this is just an overview. Anyway, so I can actually do, for example, C, C, D, D, E, F, 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 C, C, F. Maybe a gap in there too, just for groovy purposes. And so now we have this going on. Now I'll just complete the MIDI event. So put it 4th octave and 0. And now I have to bang it, so I'll put just a simple timer in there. So you see I've created a simple step sequencer. Now it's a very flexible step sequencer. For example, I can change the iterator to make it loop certain parts of the sequence. So 4. I can even make it count backwards. I thought I could anyways. I think I'm thinking of a different object. I'm still learning this, by the way. So yeah, this is handy for creating some useful kind of loops and just sort of more determined patterns. So, but this is modular, so I can take this out here and I'll put a random here instead, which is just going to create a random value each frame between 1 and A. And so now you can kind of jam by changing the letters. So lots of A's in there. Add a B. Now, as you can see, things get cramped really quick. So there's one more object I want to go over, and that is called V, variable. And variable takes input for on the left and input on the right. You can see they're called write and read. Okay, so what'll happen, you have some global variables to work with. So I'm going to say I want to write onto variable number 1, and let me think. I'm going to put the letter E. Actually, that's not going to work. I'm going to put the letter lowercase. Actually, that's not going to work. I need to think more about this. Anyways, so I'm going to put in number 7. I'm going to put the number 1. So that's storing in variable number 7. It's storing the number 1. I think I might be getting it backwards. So now if I put read number 1, oh, it's number 7. Okay, I had it backwards. So anyways, so on variable number 7, I'm going to store the number 1. So now, when I take this other variable event somewhere else, this can be anywhere, I can put number 7 in the read, and out comes the 1. So it's sort of like teleportation. So now I can change that. I can put 3 here, and out comes the 3. So this is handy because it lets us move stuff around. So we can store these variables, and we can use them in different parts of our program. Anyways, I just wanted to go over that because it gets used a lot, and it's a little confusing, obviously. Anyways, this was super informal. Not sure if I'm even going to keep this up because it's kind of not that professional, but I hope it was helpful to somebody, and I hope it showed somebody how freaking cool this is. This is a free software, so just give it a try, and I hope you enjoy it.